Ellis. I'm so excited to share another topic with you in this series around leadership. It's been a while, so I'm excited to share with you some of the research that I've been looking at and some of the perspectives that folks have been sharing with me, particularly many of my coaching clients. As you all know, I'm a DEI expert and executive coach, and many of the individuals that I coach are women in leadership, and many of them are also first generation leaders and even first generation millionaires of color. And spend a lot of time with these individuals, walking them through their vision for leadership and some of their most pressing challenges. So, for this part of the series, I want to talk specifically about why. And of course, I don't think we really need to answer this question, but let's talk about it. There was some significant research that I recently, or reports that I recently saw, and I wanted to really unpack this and connect this to the aspect of women leaders, particularly why it is so important for women leaders to not only be in community, but why they need to really, I can include myself, why women leaders in particularly need more support now than ever. That is what I want to unpack for our time together today. Why perhaps women leaders in today's world need more support than ever before. So I'm excited to kind of have this conversation, although I fit into that category. So I want to use some of my own perspectives from what I've experienced, while also sharing some of the perspectives of the women that I've worked with. And even some of the challenges that I just know that women are having. But there's been a lot of reports that have come out about the workforce as it relates to the impact of COVID on the workforce and the workplace and our job market. We know that right now there's a lot of inflation happening, or inflation is happening in the world. We're up against a recession, and there's so much impact that is happening in the workplace and in our overall society as in general. And so let's kind of look at what some of the recent studies are saying, and then I want to connect it back to why specifically our women leaders need more support now than ever. There's a study that was done by Lean In and McKinsey, and they kind of tagged this study as they were trying to uncover the impact of COVID on women in the workplace and women leaders. And this study kind of coined the phrase or the tag, the great breakup, essentially that women were dramatically leaving the workforce during the height of COVID, and that we realize that still, even now, that women are dramatically underrepresented in leadership, with only 1 in 4, the study said, 1 in 4 C-suite executives being a woman, and only 1 in 20 being a woman of color. And that'll be a separate video that I'll probably end up doing, specifically talking about leaders of color. And then maybe we'll do another one unpacking what it means to be a woman of color in leadership and what supports and community they need as well. But essentially, that report said that the broken rung is what is holding women back. As we look at, it reported that for every 100 men promoted from entry level to manager, about 87 women were being promoted and 82 women of color were being promoted. So we see about a little less than a 20% gap there, right? It's still pretty problematic when you consider how many women are in the actual workforce. We also saw in that report from Lean In and McKinsey, where again they were coining the phrase "the great breakup." Essentially, women are breaking up with work in a collectively corporate sense, if you will, or leaving the workforce in a dramatic sense. It also showed that women leaders were leaving these companies at higher rates than ever before. And as you look specifically and lean into, no pun intended, lean in, but as you look deeply into the problem, you begin to see perhaps that a lot of the issue is that this situation became so severe, to the extent that the women who responded to the survey, 53% of them said that their stress levels were higher than ever before. And that they felt just completely burnt out, and that burnout, stress and burnout, stress and burnout being the top reason that women are leaving the workforce or decided that they would leave the workforce at some point, and wanted to leave the workforce. Also in the report, it said that 40% of those women were looking for new employment, and they cited burnout as the main reason for that. So we realized that there are a lot of issues, if you will, that could impact that burnout. There are a lot of issues that could impact the stress levels that women are experiencing, and ultimately them saying, hey, deuces, I'm done with the workforce, right? The reality is, especially when we think about women of color, women who are advocates for diversity, equity, inclusion, and women who are attempting to hold on to leadership positions and really make the best and take advantage of their experiences and their intellect and their skills and their gifts and their talents, and wanting to put that into place. But not only wanting to put that into a place, they also want to be able to make a great living, right? And create a legacy of leadership. We realize that women leaders are very ambitious. However, many women are experiencing or have experienced a series of microaggressions throughout their career that really signal ways in which it is hard for them to advance. And I know some folks may roll their eyes and say, it just is what it is, but that doesn't mean it should be so. Right. And so women ultimately, we get burned out to the extent where you just get tired of having to deal with a series of microaggressions, getting tired of having to deal with prejudices or stereotypes and having to deal with those things when you really don't have to deal with those things if a workplace is not dealing with those things, right? So that becomes a factor. Another factor is when women come into leadership or attempt to go higher into leadership, there's an aspect of being overworked. And there's when you're being overworked, particularly in those spaces, because we've expected so much from women, we also realize that there's an aspect of being overworked and being under-recognized and underpaid. Can't ignore that. We're often talking about the gender equity as it relates to pay. We're often talking about the wage gap as it relates to women, right? And so that overworked and under-recognized and or underpaid, under-acknowledged, just over time can wear you down, right? And so we've seen some of the reasons why that adds to that 53% in this article, saying that stress is higher than ever before. Any external issues and forces that impact that exhaustion that women leaders are feeling, and that burnout, to an extent where not necessarily wanting to leave the workforce altogether. And then also a segment of women saying, hey, I can't afford to leave the workforce altogether. I just got to find a new job, right? This is a real issue here because we see women leaders who are doing more to support their team members, to foster inclusion, to be able to move the needle along as it relates to equity. But a lot of that work that women are doing is going mostly unrewarded. And I can speak to that specifically. I shared earlier that I have many clients on the DEI side and many clients that I coach on the executive side and the leaders doing leadership development. And many of those individuals are doing the work of diversity, equity, inclusion, and waving that flag inside the organization, in addition to their other job, kind of off the side of their desk. And they are exhausted, right? They are waving the flag. They are championing the work of trying to make a more inclusive workplace culture. And they're exhausted in trying to do that while also trying to do the job that they're being paid and hold the title that they were asked to do and appointed to do and hired to do in their workforces. And they're exhausted. They're exhausted of that. We can be, I include myself in that. There's some exhaustion among us. And then I'll say lastly, before I kind of go into this pivot piece, is that women leaders also really want to work for companies that are more flexible, offer more work from home, flexibility, more well-being resources for employee well-being and just overall wellness. And also women leaders want to see more of a commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion. And again, at some point, as it relates to being able to get all of that from one workplace, that can be very difficult, especially as women attempt to move up the ladder. And so ultimately you make a choice and say, hey, I throw my hands up here. I'm just going to exit the workforce until I can identify identify a workplace that gives me specifically an opportunity to balance out the flexibility of my schedule and work from home or remote or additional resources, professional development, also cares about my well-being and my health and wellness as an employee, but also is really championing and leading and allowing me to make an impact and have a say around how diversity, equity, and inclusion moves in this company. Now, that is kind of the summary, if you will, of this report that came out with McKinsey and Lean In. Now, not too long after this report came out, I think it had been several months, but just recently, this is where we kind of see a turn here. Just recently, as of May 2023, I pulled a report from Bloomberg, and Bloomberg is now reporting that the participation rate among women ages 25 to 54 has climbed a record of 77.5% as of April 2023, which is a record share of the prime age of American women in the US now in the workforce, which has surpassed the peak of women in the workforce that it reached in year 2000. And this is in comparison of data being tracked, government data being tracked, going back all the way to the 1940s. So just in a matter of 9 to 12 months, we go from women leaving the workforce in droves. And then now we see this record participation in the workforce, the highest it's ever been as of April 2023, at 77.5% of women ages 25 to 54 literally working a job, who are full-time employed. And these stats are from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. So that says something, that there's been a bounce back. That says that women needed to take a break. We needed to take breaks. It says that perhaps we needed to reframe and reset our focus on what kind of work and what kind of job and what kind of industry we wanted to be in. And I think it also says too that we needed to reassess like our livelihoods, our family structure, and what it would mean, to create a lifestyle that did not necessarily depend on our income. And if our income changed, what would it do to the livelihood of our family or our lifestyles, right? Also, we know that these trends are getting higher as it relates to the rise in remote work. Also, as it relates to, of course, more and more women going to school and getting degrees. But ultimately, it's the economic, I believe, and also this is citing the Bloomberg article, that economic conditions, with the job market being somewhat strong, it really lifts their participation for the most part for a variety of different groups. But we also see that inflation is continuing to persist, and it really pressures folks to find ways to really offset their personal expenses and, again, be able to maintain their livelihood. So we went from just a year ago, the great breakup, to I don't know what they're going to call this, right? The great fill in the blank. So women being in the workforce at record numbers, at the highest numbers we've ever seen. Now, I don't know what that means for gender parity, but I want to kind of talk briefly on what that means for making sure that women leaders, as they go higher up into organizations, as they create spaces that are more diverse and equitable and inclusive, as women attempt, as we women attempt to try to lead teams effectively through these challenging times. It means that community is critical. It means that having someone in your space, in your career, in your life, who is an advisor, a counselor, can help walk you through some of the challenges, help you bring back solutions to your workplace, and help you kind of navigate how to go through the process of making sure that you have peace not only in your life but on the job, and you have success in those spaces as well. It means that we need to be in community. And you all know that I really press being in community and what it means to not only be in community with like-minded people, but what it means to be in community essentially where folks are championing you. Who is your champion? Because again, for us to leave the workforce, for women and women leaders specifically to leave the workforce, and now suddenly we're right back in the workforce in record numbers, that says something. And I think it says something specifically. We can look at inflation and say, well, hey, people got to make money and they got to pay their bills. But ultimately it says, okay, how can we create, and there are tons of organizations that create community for women, but are we really taking advantage of community? Are we taking advantage of coaching? Are we taking advantage of opportunities to be able to learn and grow from one another as women and women leaders? What additional resources do we need to be seeking out for ourselves so that there is not this instability, if you will, of women in the workforce? I am all for women choosing to do whatever they want to do with their careers. As an entrepreneur coming upon 20 years of entrepreneurship next year in 2024, I am completely for women saying, forget though, I've done all that I can do in a workforce. I'm going to go into the marketplace and be an entrepreneur and be a business owner and give my dream a shot, right? I'm all for that. But on the flip side of that, I'm all for women saying, I know where my gifts and talents and strengths lie. It is not in entrepreneurship. I do very well in a workplace, in a workforce, and that's where I want to make my contribution. Even in all of that, even in either way a woman chooses to go, especially if she desires and is in a leadership position, we need to be thinking about the gap there, that quick gap that I believe personally has less to do with inflation and needed to be able to just have a job and a paycheck, and more about making sure that these conditions are safe for women. What does it mean for a woman to actively, a woman leader specifically, to actively choose how to navigate her career in such a way where she has the kind of community and the kind of support where she feels safe, where she feels supported? That is very important. So I got some things that I think women need to really be considering as you go about determining community and building community around you where you can get be championed as a leader. And if you don't identify as a woman and you're watching this, what can you do to support the women around you that you mentor, that you report to, the women that you manage, the women that you will hire, the women that you love and know, the women just in your life? How can you be thinking of ways to champion them? So again, yes, we went through COVID and we're still dealing with the remnants of COVID. And even in that global pandemic and seeing women leave the workforce in droves for many reasons, that biggest reason, according to the study, was burnout and stress. And now here we are just a year later after that report, and we're back in the workforce at a record 77.5%. Who's to say that that number won't drop again if we are not thinking specifically about ways to make sure that women take the responsibility themselves and know that they need to build community? So how do we do this? I think one of the key things, or one of the key benefits that women leaders need to be thinking about, we need to be thinking about ways that we can build community and provide resources to one another around dealing with gender bias. That is one of the top issues that we face in the workforce and in the world. Gender bias and the stereotypes in the workplace that accompany this bias can really impact the confidence of a woman, can really impact the opportunities that a woman leader may have for advancement. And when you are in community and you're receiving support and being championed through coaching and counsel, you are learning how to navigate and overcome these challenges. You are being empowered to be able to assert your leadership effectively. Listen, I have some clients, I have some executive coaching clients that are dealing with some really real challenges as it relates to gender bias. Maybe someone that they report to, or someone that reports to them, rather, someone that reports to them, or someone that's on their team, someone that they manage, does not share the same gender identity, and is really enforcing bias and stereotypes in the way in which they're communicating and interacting with them. And it is slowing down workplace productivity. It is hindering that woman leader in being able to push the organization forward, right? And I've seen it time and time again. So I would say, as women and those who love and support women, are thinking about ways to make sure that these women are championed in community and receiving the counsel and support that they need, it means that we're really helping them think through gender bias. And first of all, believing women, right? Believing women when they say, this is what happened to me, and I believe it's because I identify as a woman. This is what I'm experiencing, even sometimes with other women, right? There's bias there as well. So I want to center that as one of the top things that I am seeing that we need to really, really continue. We do not need to get comfortable as it relates to helping women overcome bias, and not just putting the ball in our court as women to help us overcome these things, but helping individuals who carry this bias and reinforce these stereotypes, helping them dismantle their mindset and diffuse, right? And kind of disarm themselves from reinforcing this type of behavior. Organizations need to determine, how are we going to deal with these behaviors? Bad behavior should never be rewarded. Never. And there should be a system in place to call out bad behavior, especially when it relates to gender bias. The next thing that I think is important as women think about ways to support themselves through community and through coaching and counsel is leadership development. There are some phenomenal leadership development programs that women can go through, but specifically, and even some companies will provide resources to women to help them be more effective and more authentic leaders in ways that are really unique to their own abilities and skills and personalities, right? But specifically as it relates to community and coaching, women leaders have an opportunity to really hone in on those development skills. And especially when it's in a one-on-one setting, when you're working with a coach in a one-on-one setting. And this can happen in community too, because in community, you can do role playing, you can do some mock experiences and things of that nature. You can do some shadow work, right? And shadow work is usually kind of a therapy term, but you can do some shadow work even in coaching and leadership development training as well. But when you're in kind of that community and kind of coaching resource space, you get a chance to, especially in the one-on-one, you get a chance to really work through communication. Sometimes we're communicating in a very transactional way. And this is my belief as a woman. My belief as a woman is that we have a very beautiful aspect of our femininity that allows us to communicate in a very effective way that men, those who identify as men, may not have as much as we do, and that we don't necessarily have to communicate the way that men typically do, or we expect men to communicate in order to be seen as respected and honored and as the boss, right? I think there is, and I've seen it with myself and how I operate and the success that I've had in being able to just tweak my communication just a little bit, and not a way where there's any kind of condescension, and no way where I need to shrink or ask the other person to shrink. It just means that if I am less transactional in my communication and more interpersonal and more transformative, if you will, I use that in a softer way in my communication, I understand that there's a possibility that I can get more done in a leadership capacity. There's also a space to really work through when women leaders are really seeking out community and counsel and coaching. And this is what I'm advocating for, that we need more of this, and that you should be seeking. Do not do this on your own. If you're listening to this or watching this and you're a woman leader, do not suffer in this way. Seek out the leadership development that you need. If you do not identify as a woman and you are watching or listening to this, then think about ways that you can support the women in your circle, in your workplace, in your space, in your life, to be able to help them. But I think the decision-making piece is critical. Working through strategic thinking and strategy is so critical in today's world. And being able to problem solve through strategy, or use strategy to problem solve. And here's another one that's even critical: crisis management, conflict resolution, right? If we saw women leaving the workforce in droves, and then a year later, we see a record number of women in the workforce, imagine how much time that kind of closed, that gap did not close, how much time was not allowed for that gap to close. And imagine how much conflict, with all the things we've seen in the world recently, can kind of bubble up as we're operating in this new norm, right? That wasn't a huge time for the gap to close, for us to figure out our lives, right? It meant that women needed to just go back to work, and we needed to go back to work quickly. And we needed to go back to work in some ways without really getting a vision for who we are as leaders, right? So I think that in thinking about why leadership development is critical as women pursue community, as they pursue coaching and counsel and things of that nature, it means that you have an opportunity to become a more effective leader, a more influential leader, not only within your organization, but then within your community as well. I also think the benefit of identifying why and how and ways that women leaders can pursue counsel and community and coaching is there's a significant conversation happening now around executive presence. And I may even do a video on executive presence. And recently I've gotten some inquiries around how to help with executive presence as it relates to the coaching that I do. And I think that's important. Women leaders, as we've come back to this workforce in droves, at record numbers, there are some unique challenges that we are going to encounter, that we are encountering when we are negotiating, when we are thinking through how we stand up an idea or present an idea, how we present a concept, how we stand up an initiative inside of our organization, how we project ourselves with confidence that is true to who we are, and not trying to mirror the energy that we've seen, portrayed by either other women or even men as well, in a very masculine way, which masculinity is necessary to a certain extent, especially as women kind of play that balance, right? But also executive presence is critical as women position authority, as they kind of sit in these roles where the buck stops with them, essentially, right? And so understanding that executive presence, how you show up, how you present, how you carry yourself, how you are seen as a thought leader, right? All those things are critical. And thinking about how to build executive presence really equips women leaders with the tools to really communicate your ideas. As I said, standing up an idea, how to communicate your ideas, and then gaining the respect of your peers and your superiors, right? And even those who, who report to you. You get a chance to gain that respect and really use all of your confidence and all of your authority to really communicate your ideas in a very effective way. And so building that executive presence can really present women or any woman leader as a thought leader in her industry and in her immediate workplace space that she's in. I think another aspect of, I mentioned negotiation as one of the elements that might come up as a part of your executive presence. I think I want to highlight that as one of the benefits of women leaders who really, at this stage of our state of our world, and the 77% of women in the workforce at record numbers, I really want to center how women can be advocates and using negotiation and building negotiation tools and tactics and being able to advocate for things. Women are going to, women leaders, we encounter unique challenges when we're negotiating for our ideas and our needs, our salaries, our, support, the supports that we need in the workplace, the reasons why we need our support, the supports that we're asking for, the vision that we have and why it's necessary to execute this vision. We have a very unique way of advocating for things and being able to negotiate and get things done in the way that's best for the organization. And so I think that as women leaders seek out community and counsel and coaching, we should be seeking out an opportunity to improve our negotiation skills, to improve our advocacy skills. And when I say advocacy, advocating not just for our ideas, but advocating for your team, advocating for the issues that are very important to your organization, and just having that vision and that foresight and being able to advocate for that so that you can leverage that so that others will begin to see it, right? And it'll make the difference. It'll move the needle inside of your organization. And so just really being able to, really having an opportunity to enable women to really assert their interests and assert their vision, and then achieve more favorable outcomes, I think, in the work that they do, in the work that we do. I should say we, a woman leader, right? Another reason why it's important we really need to hone in on creating more community, and women need to advocate for themselves. Women leaders need to advocate for themselves in pursuing community and counsel and coaching, is because, of course, work-life balance. Now, I've always said that work-life balance is a myth. I have said that for years. So if you've seen some articles that are coming out recently or in the last year or so, or you've seen some speakers and TED Talks and stuff like that saying that workplace balance is a myth, just know that Dr. Ariel Ellis, before she was Dr. Ariel Ellis, declared that work-life balance is a myth in 2015, almost 8 years ago. It was 8 years ago. I literally was writing and working on some research or articles I was working on, and I declared to myself, I said, work-life balance is a myth. In fact, I don't have my book in front of me, but in my book, The Original Millennial, which I wrote in 2015 and released in 2016, I wrote in my book then that work-life balance is a myth. It is. I hope you see it now. Some people don't quite get it, but I want to explain why. I believe it is, and others have said that it is here recently. And again, just know that I declared it in 2015 and put in a book that was released in 2016. So anyway, the reason I say that, but the reason I say it's a myth, but also it is something to be considered for women leaders, I think it goes without saying. I think it's self-explanatory that we need to be considering it, but know that that balance is not necessarily something to be achieved, essentially. It's just like you say, let me give you an example. It's just like if you say, oh goodness, it's just like if you say, okay, I'm a professor. You all know that. In addition to my life as a consultant and an executive coach. Many times I hear my sweet, dear students say, I'm just trying to, figure it all out. I want to figure it out, Dr. Ellis. I'm just trying to figure it out, meaning their life, what they want to do with their career and all that kind of stuff. Okay, cool. You go figure it out at 21 years old. When in reality, you never figure out your life. Life is not to be figured out. It is to be lived. And that's the same thing with balance. If you're balancing, you're always doing like this. My mic is in the way. You're always doing like this, right? You're never here. You're never here, right? You're always kind of a little bit up here, a little bit down here, a little bit kind of, but the moment that you're ever here, you're never here for long. Maybe for a day or so, if that. Maybe for a few hours, you're right here. But you're never here. You're never balanced, right? It's a juggle. It's a dance. It's a rhythm. And while I think the phrase work-life balance is a fair phrase to articulate, I do not believe it is something to be achieved. I believe it is impossible. Now, 10 years from now, I may change my views, but as I said, I came to this revelation for myself in 2015, and that was 8 years ago. I am now recording this in 2023, and I have not changed my mind. Because our personal lives, balanced with our work lives, can be very demanding. Just your personal life can be demanding. I have a demanding personal life, but not because it's stressful. I have a great personal life. I love my life, right? But I think women leaders, particularly women, there's an opportunity to choose what kind of life you want. I don't know why that's easier for men, but for women, it is difficult for us sometimes, and someone would debate that, of course. But I think sometimes it's easier for women, or harder for women, to really choose that life, choose what those priorities are, choose to set boundaries, choose to manage their time, choose to prioritize their self-care. And we're not doing that. I can speak to friends and family and even some of my clients and tell you, we're not doing that. We're not setting boundaries. We're not managing time effectively in ways that are healthy. And we're not always prioritizing our self-care. So that balance is perpetually unachievable. But it does mean, what that does mean, however, is that we need to be more intentional about those things, prioritizing self-care. We need to be more intentional about managing time appropriately in a way that's effective for our lifestyle and for our workplaces, and then setting boundaries. We definitely need to be more effective in setting boundaries. And I think when women, specifically women leaders, when we are in community, when we are in spaces where we're being coached and counseled, we have, it is spotlighted and highlighted, if you will, to do that. I think also, of course, needless to say, career advancement is critical as women leaders face these career obstacles and advancement. We really need to be able to be in community and have these coaching relationships that help us identify opportunities for growth, create a career plan. I always do a personal action plan with my clients from start to finish to really look at their career progression. And what I like to focus on is what is your leadership legacy? Specifically, what is your legacy of leadership and what does that mean? And then also, what does it mean to really develop the necessary skills to take on more significant leadership roles if that's what you want? Because some of us don't necessarily want to advance in a role. I don't necessarily want to advance in a role specifically. I just want to do more of the work. I want to help more people. I want to make more impact. I want to coach more people. I want to consult with more organizations, and I want to teach more students. Specifically in the space that I do that work, those are my career goals. Now, I have other professional pursuits that don't have anything to do with those things. But as I look specifically at career, right, I just want to do more of it. Don't necessarily want to move up a ladder. I want to do more of it. There are women, of course, women leaders who want to move up a ladder, and they should be able to. But there are also women like me who I'm doing exactly what I want to do. I just want to do more of it so I can make more impact. That's all. And I think when it comes to being in community and having opportunities to be coached, you get a chance to have that connection and have someone champion you to be able to do that. I also think that because of what we've seen in the past year or so, 2 years, through the global pandemic, through racial injustice, through social unrest, we have had to, as a society, as a culture, we have had to build up and pull from our loins, if you will, from our core. We've had to pull out this human resiliency to the extent that, it's been tested. Our resilience has been tested. Our confidence in ourselves has been tested. And if we look at those two reports, from saying women, that we had the great breakup, women were breaking up with their jobs, and then now suddenly we're back at record number. It begs the question, what does that mean for us to overcome issues with our confidence and our resilience? Have we built up a reservoir, or rebuilt and reinvested and plugged back in and put the battery in our back again? Do we have more resilience now? Because our resilience and our confidence has been tested. When did we get it back? When did we re-up? Right? When did we power back up? When did we plug the charger back in? When did we put the battery back in? Right? Have we done that? And I think it's important to be in community so that you can get that confidence and that resilience back. It's important to have to be in coaching and in counseling spaces where you can, and receiving wise counsel, and being in advisory spaces where you can get that support. Because in some cases, we know, all of us, male, whether you identify as a woman or man, all of us struggle many times with imposter syndrome, especially as you go up in your career. And we all struggle with self-doubt. It's just a human emotion or human feeling to struggle with. Am I enough? Am I good enough to achieve this? Am I good enough to pursue that client contract? Am I good enough will they pick me? And I hate that phrase, pick me, but will they select me for this opportunity? I know I can do it, but I'm not really sure if I'm good enough or how I stack up against other people. And so that's a factor as well. And I think in coaching and in community where you can be championed, you are equipped with the tools to handle any setbacks and challenges that you may have with that strength that you need, right? And the setbacks that you may have experienced with just having that self-determination again. I think also, and I'm just kind of going off the top here based on some of the things the work that I've done and some of the things I've experienced, and even some of the reports that I've seen, but mainly what I've seen in my coaching practice. I think women leaders really will benefit, of course, from being in a network, right? We need more support than we actually let on. I said, and I think I may have said this in one of my videos. It may have been on my IG. I did an IG live, I think. And I may have said this there, that we actually, and I think this is just a human experience. I believe that we as humankind, we actually need more support than we're willing to admit. I think we live in especially in the US, we live in such an individualistic society that collectively it is difficult to collectively, it is difficult to admit or even assess within yourself when you need support. So as I frame this conversation today around women leaders, I say that network and support is critical because the value in community is priceless. The overall, just the overall experience that you cannot measure what you will get and what you will gain from having a safe space with an executive coach or with a champion or with a sponsor even, or with a mentor or with a community where you feel that you have like-minded women and even men, of course, around who can champion you, right? Do not, specifically, I'm speaking to women leaders, do not do this by yourself. You do not have to. I may have said that a few minutes ago. Do not do this by yourself. You don't have to. Even if it means just seeking out as much support as you can, or just one group, one support group, identifying it as an executive coach, identifying a mentor and regularly meeting with that mentor, identifying a sponsor or two. Many times I think I said this on another video, sometimes your mentor or your sponsor does not have to be a woman like you. If that's how you identify, then have to be that. But someone who is your champion, that's what you need. Do not do this by yourself. You don't have to. There's no reason for you to. So network and support is critical. Community is critical. The last thing I'll say is, I've said this as a DEI, champion and expert and consultant. I said this a little bit earlier, but I think also it's important for women to seek out community and even coaching if necessary to really address the cultural and structural, organizational changes inside of their workplaces. There are a lot, trust me, y'all, there are a lot of cultural and structural barriers that keep women from advancing and just having peace on the job, just like having peace of mind, just being able to have productive relationships that, let me say this, effective communication and I'll say effective communication and, fruitful, that's a good word, fruitful relationships in the workforce with their employees and their peers in ways that help them maintain their peace of mind. Because who wants to let a job completely stress you out? That is no way of life. I saw a post on LinkedIn that talked about, well, I'll pause and finish my thought. But there are a lot of cultural barriers inside of these organizations, you all. You may know, if you work in one and you know this, you know how it is. A lot of cultural barriers inside of organizations, a lot of structural barriers that really impede and slow down and stall the success of women leaders in the work that they can and that they're so capable of doing. And I think what's important about being in community and being coached and having someone or a team of people that you work with to focus on your advancement is that you really get a chance to learn how others are navigating these challenges. You really get a chance to develop strategies that really affect positive change within your organization and then give you peace of mind about the work that you're doing. I even sometimes sit with my executive coaching clients and we create a script. We create talking points that they can use in the workforce to be able to highlight some of the cultural and structural barriers in either in one-on-one settings or in meetings and things of that nature, in group meetings, and preparing for meetings, preparing for conversations, preparing to even initiate conversations, right? And how to develop those talking points and those scripts around the understanding that we're trying to chip away at some of those cultural and structural barriers that are really, really in a lot of ways adding to, and one of the key catalysts for the stress and the burnout that sent women out of the workforce in the first place, right? And then I was about to say something about, this is my last point. No, this is getting long, but this is my last point. The reason why community and coaching is critical, or women leaders having a space where they can be in community, or a space where they can receive support from a coach, is that you have got to feel a sense of personal fulfillment. I talked about self-care and all that earlier, but your personal growth and fulfillment means everything as it relates to aligning your values and your passion and your God-given purpose with the work that you do. Yes, you want to have a balanced life and all of that. That's important. You're not a human doing, you're a human being, right? I said it again. You're not a human doing, you're a human being. So none of your life should be focused on what you do, what you can do. It should completely be focused on who you be, who you are being, who you are becoming, your purpose, your God-given purpose, right? But our occupations play into that so much. And so as we pursue community and as we go into spaces of coaching, we need to be prioritizing our personal growth and fulfillment. We need to be thinking about how we can freely explore our values and our passion and our purpose in ways where it really aligns with the reason we pursue the leadership roles that we pursue. That connection has to be there, right? It has to be there. And that alignment is so critical, because what it does is it contributes to a sense of fulfillment. It contributes to a sense of purpose, right? And you can go home to your family, your babies, your significant other, your parents, or the people that, if you're a caregiver, the people that you care for, and feel a sense of connection with them, because your life is all intertwined, and there's a holistic feeling of fulfillment. I'm working on a podcast topic which is completely different from my work. My podcast, Affirmations of Excellence, I'm working on an episode about fulfillment from a spiritual perspective. But that fulfillment is critical, and you can't get it all from a job. You won't, and you shouldn't get it all from a job. You should not get all of your sense of personal fulfillment from a job. But it does mean that as you pursue leadership roles and as you operate in leadership roles, that you should, whether your sense of fulfillment ultimately comes from your salary or it ultimately comes from your ability to get things done in an industry and move the needle inside of an industry. Maybe it's a collective of all of those things, or a couple of those things. You feel like, yes, I'm making a difference here, or yes, I am breaking the generational cycles of poverty by making these 6-7 figures, right? Like, and that is fulfilling to me because I'm able to pour back into my family and ensure that, you know, the issues that we've had over the years with underemployment and underemployment or unemployment, or even being underpaid and all those things, like that stops with me. and I'm able to gain this sense of fulfillment, or I'm able to carry out the legacy that my parents set for me, right? My parents laid this great foundation for me, and I'm able to take things to the next level, or whatever that is, whatever that sense of fulfillment is for you, and whatever that does for you, your job should be a part of that. Your career should be a part of that. Right. And so that is why I am advocating today and looking at those two totally different studies and looking at the numbers now that 77.5% of women are in the workforce, that growth has spiked when just a year ago, we were going out of the workforce, leaving the workforce in droves, to the extent where it's being coined the great breakup. Breakup didn't last for long. We circled the block. Women circled the block and came back to the workforce, according to this Bloomberg report. So those are the things that were on my mind. I know this video was longer than some of my other videos, but I had a lot to say because I haven't seen you all in a while. But I love your feedback, specifically if you're a woman leader. You have an opportunity to grow professionally. You have an opportunity to grow personally. You have an opportunity to overcome barriers. You have an opportunity to thrive in leadership roles, and you have an opportunity to make immeasurable impact, or even measurable impact, in your workplace, in the workforce, in the marketplace, for those of you who are entrepreneurs, and in your community, and even in your family. And so I hope that you will make a deeper effort. That is my charge for you. And even if you are not a woman, if you do not identify as a woman, but you want to support the women leaders in your life, I want to encourage you to think about what it means to be more intentional about building community, identifying places and spaces where you can be coached and receive the proper counsel so that you can be empowered to fully realize your potential, to really contribute to your organization's success, and really wholeheartedly and holistically make the kind of positive impact that you want to within your spheres of influence. And so that is my charge for you today. Please feel free to reach out to me. You can visit my website, arielellis.com, and book a call, or you can just email me directly at arielellis.com. All right, everybody. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.